Good evening, everybody. I've muted everybody, so please unmute yourselves as you like. Lovely to see fabulous turnout. Welcome to newcomers. Duncan, hello. Good evening to you. You may recognize Duncan's surname. He happens to be my nephew, but he's in the middle of a very exciting manufacturing project of his own, which we can perhaps get to a little later. Hello, Julian, good evening. Lee, nice to see you again. Stephen, Angela, Adam, Mark, hi everyone, Sarah, Simon. Tell me, Simon, are you really in the Alps, or are you in...
No, I'm not, no.
No, I know you spend a lot of time in the Alps, or used to before the dread.
I'm hoping to be there in a few weeks, but one never knows at the moment. So I thought I'd just go for the photograph.
Yeah. Well, listen, wonderful to see you all. We had a fantastic discussion last week with Bob Gibbon, and I'm hoping he's going to show up. He had a bit of trouble with the link. Lee, glad to see you got my email with it. He had the same problem as yourself. But there we go. Oh, here he is. Bob, welcome.
Like I say, he's just sent me a message, so he should be.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, he's just coming in. Oh, and we got Paul Brooks coming in. Everybody's going to be so tiny soon. We're going to need a microscope to see everybody on the matrix. Paul, good evening to you. He's just connecting. And Roy's coming in. All right. Okay. Welcome, everybody. It's been obviously a busy couple of weeks. I know a lot of you are involved in some shape or form in Digital Manufacturing Week last week. This week, we've had the news of the government's green economy. And I think it'd be really nice if we could touch on that as people in the manufacturing sector, just to find out what our views are. I know that there are, reading in the press and elsewhere, there are some interesting perspectives on it. It promises a lot in the headline, but I'm wondering if it particularly delivers. I did invite Martin Chilcott of Manufacture 2030 on. He's a really good source on this. That's Manufacture 2030, all one word. I think it's .com. And he is all about helping companies reach carbon net zero. I'm actually interviewing him tomorrow about it, but it would have been great to have his comments. He unfortunately is on another call at the moment. But let's get some views. Who's got some opinions on this? Stephen, I know you do. Would you like to just have a, throw a hand grenade into the middle of the discussion and see what happens?
How exciting. That's likely to backfire, I think, isn't it? I just thought it was so very interesting that with the announcement about net zero, there's almost no mention of manufacturing whatsoever. In fact, I don't think the word cropped up. So all of this is going to be delivered apparently without considering the importance of manufacturing, either in terms of creating the assets that are being talked about, wind farms and a whole bunch of other things, quite a comprehensive vision for how net zero will be achieved, or even thinking of the flip side of it, so how manufacturers themselves can become more environmentally friendly, shall we say, in the methods of production. So I thought that was interesting, just as an observation. What on earth is government thinking about if it's not thinking about manufacturing? Discuss.
Well, can we look back at previous drives on the renewables front to see if past can be a guide to the future? Because I know that what happened when we started building offshore wind farms was that much of the high value manufacturing was done in other countries, and we just got some fairly low grade construction work. I think that obviously has to be a danger. I'm wondering if anybody thinks that the government might have seen the light, will get it better this time. Who's got some views on that?
Can I just chip in there, please, Nick?
Adrian, sure.
I'm based in Ellesmere Port, and on the doorstep here, we've got a significant amount of wind turbines already. And the area at Ince Marshes, there's a organisation there called Protos, which is part of Peel Holdings, and they've established an energy park there where they're looking for tenants. There's 2 or 3 in at the moment, but the 2 projects that are coming up there, one is which is now in the local news, is a hydrogen from waste plastics. And there was a map I saw this morning. Somebody published it on LinkedIn, where you started to look at the surrounding area and the areas of requirements for hydrogen. And obviously you've got offshore areas of depleted hydrocarbons where there's a possibility to store the carbon capture. And that's as of this morning. So, a lot of this carbon capture is going to be a result of manufacturing. So I think in all fairness, that you've got to give the government a little bit of credit that. And this is on my doorstep. So, you tend to notice things on your doorstep before you notice anything further afield.
No, for sure. No, absolutely. I mean, I think it's really, okay, let's just take everything at face value. I just suspect that what Stephen's alluding to and what I'm fearing is just that there's no detail yet, and maybe that will come. But I noted that Stephen Phipson at Make UK said that something has to be done about electricity costs. That's what manufacturers are worried about, and that whether or not this will generate, if you pardon the expression, cheaper prices. It's one thing to talk about all this, but to expect manufacturers to shoulder a great deal of cost may not be the right way to go.
Mm.
Who's jumping in? Adam, you must have a thought. You've always got something to say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, from a government point of view, can you really rely on the government to do it properly with anything to do with manufacturing, because they don't seem to have done it very well beforehand or previously. Anything from a green and environmental point of view has got to be a good objective. Yes, it may need fleshing out and sorting out, and hopefully they will do it properly, but it's got to be a good move, without a shadow of a doubt on that. I just hope, like you were saying, and Adrian was saying, is that, we do utilise some of the expertise and the manufacturers within the UK and actually building their things as well, because I remember when I was a young engineer, there was a place not far from me when I lived in Ashby-Dare-Zouch at Swadlincote that made the big wind power generation windmill style stuff there, massive, and it was a fantastic site, and the blades and everything they were coming out of it, gone. It was gone within the space of probably about 10-15 years. So I just hope that we do utilise some of the stuff we need in the UK, and utilise the manufacturers in the UK. But I can never hold out hope with anything with manufacturing on any of the government or any party from that point of view. That's just me. Cynical view, probably.
Paul, I wonder if I could ask you. I mean, at Santander, are you looking at this as something that's going to create a lot of demand for investment from financial institutions like yourself? Or are you waiting to get more steer from government?
There's another chuckle from me, like Adam, with getting a steer from government. That will be good as well. I haven't stayed that close to the news this week, to be honest. It's been a particularly busy week in the world of manufacturing, which probably in itself is a good sign, because we've been talking to quite a few manufacturers during the week about new propositions, etc. I think for me, the way that we're approaching it within Santander is looking at it from the point of view of wider sustainability. Everything needs to green is very important, and absolutely we must must move forward. But everything that the businesses that we support, we're looking at it from a sustainability point of view. What are the outside risks? What are the internal risks? How are they looking at managing the costs? You mentioned the energy, electricity costs that Stephen Phipson had referenced. I think we're looking for a business that is looking to work with us. We're looking for them to have a real idea of what their footprint is overall, to use the current jargon, and how they're looking to reduce that, and how they're looking to become sustainable in the long term, whether it be from a carbon point of view, whether it be from managing their risks, reducing their energy, generating their own energy from whatever source and resources they have available to them, depending on the process that they get involved with. So I think it's an ongoing process, and it's something that is only going to get more and more important for a bank that's analysing a proposition and looking at overall risks when meeting a new customer, or looking at an existing customer. So it's something that I don't think we're particularly going to respond to any announcements this week, but it sort of it pervades everything that we're looking at now, and it's something that we put right at the top of the agenda.
Yeah, I guess really what I hate to come across as cynical old hack, but cynicism is deep in my bones when it comes to this kind of thing. And I suppose that if manufacturing has been not at the forefront of politicians' minds, as we know it hasn't for all these decades, why would it suddenly be at the forefront of their minds now, when their mindset is all about inward investment? They expect foreign capital to come to our rescue time and time again to prop up our balance of payments. And they don't understand that how much resource there is here. So their first option always seems to me is to ignore UK manufacturing and go for the big bright shiny names from overseas. Now, am I being cynical? I welcome some thoughts on that, because somebody's got to make a noise about it. Make UK have started. But there's something else I'd like to talk about in a minute, where we might be able to generate a little bit of noise as well. But am I being overly cynical, or do you agree with my point of view? Who would like to pick up on that?
I think, Nick, you need to make your own noise. You can't rely on the government to do everything for you, because they probably won't do things that you want them to. So I think you have to take your own initiative and say, well, what can we shout about our own industry? I think that probably means a number of cross sections collaborating together. Let's say the carbon capture. What can we say about this? Where are the good installations? How can we market that? How can we get other countries involved in that? Start with yourselves, I think. I think if you leave it to the government to look after everything, you just won't get a slice of the cake for yourself, that's for sure.
Maybe we want to have a big campaign to raise money for an advert in the Financial Times. I don't know.
I was going to say, the only thing that I'd add to that is definitely should always start with themselves in promoting it. What it may do is we are quite. If you imagine that you pulled all of the organisations and all the membership organisations together on one focus, completely aligned on the drive of manufacturing. So Make UK, made in the Midlands, made in Britain, all the membership organisations. And if they had a cross-party working element across there, perhaps you would do something inwardly from a manufacturing point of view. But we haven't. They all have their own vested interest, and
You're
that's
quite
where
right there, Adam.
That's where some of it, I think, needs to change. If you look at it, if every single one of those organisations, membership organisations, joined up with the like the banks and everything, and you got this could we talk about it, cross-party in the political element? You got a cross-party working group across the membership organisations focused on aligning what we need to do in manufacturing. You'd have a massive powerhouse, in my opinion, from that point of view.
Yeah.
Spot on.
Yeah, Lee. Good evening. Do you look at this this huge program of investment in the green economy as something, does it get you excited as an engineering company?
No, is the honest answer. Not because of all the other problems and day-to-day running of it, but long term, yes, it does. Even from a personal point of view, we're trying to be more environmentally friendly here at home, because I was brought up of the generation, and when I was a very young boy, things were mended and you made do, and then late 80s, when the manufacturing industry went to pot and everything went abroad and we became a service sector establishment, it was cheap as chips, everything coming from China, and we were throwing everything away. What I think people need to get into their heads now is the days of a 99p t-shirt are over. If we as a global species want to do something, then we've got to accept that, and there is a cost, and we are a throwaway society, and we do need to get out of that. And for people of 40 years and over, that's quite a difficult thing to get your head around, because we're so used to it from that point of view. But then we've all can remember our grandparents that from the war literally didn't throw anything away, and mended everything and made do with everything. So from a national perspective and a humanitarian perspective, we all need to accept that those days are over. Now, from manufacturing, I completely agree with Adam. We're members of NDI, which is an affiliation of Make UK. Then we're also members of WEAF, the West of England Aerospace Forum. I also attend Midland Aerospace Alliance meetings. I also keep abreast of Made in the Midlands and other organisations like that. And Adam, you are spot on. There seems to be no synergy in direction. Now, what a lot of also people don't realise is when the word manufacturing is used, your average Joe thinks of cars or mechanical items. They don't realise that we make satellites, telephones, trainers, belts, clothes, shoes, rich boys' toys. The manufacturing sector itself is massive, and we just don't realise what it's like. And it gets my bloody goat and the rough edge of me, and let's just say I have to mind my natural language quite frequently when I get embroiled in conversations like this, and try and keep my professional head on, because otherwise the air would be blue and I'll be throwing things around. And my biggest concern, Adam, and if about all these trade organisations, they do have a self-interest, without a shadow of a doubt. You pay for a membership fee, you pay to attend Meet the Buyer events, and a lot of the time, the big primes that are attending these Meet the Buyer events are paying lip service. They don't. A lot of the times, they say they want to engage with SMEs. I challenged the CEO once and said, "Come down. What do you want? Well, I'll buy it. We're going to invest in it." And it's just lip service. And until you get that relationship with a certain individual at a certain company that you're trying to sell to, or until you've built that relationship with a certain individual, you've got no chance, absolutely no chance of company like ours. We've gone from 700k to 3.5 million in 3 years. I'm trying to recruit 5 people at the moment. I need 2 skilled 5-axis millers, programmers. I need a production manager. I need an operations admin assistant. And what else am I looking for? Oh, and a skilled manual turner as well. I've had 1 response for the production engineer from a guy in East Sussex. And I've had 1 application for the admin assistant, which is somebody that lives 15 miles down the road. So it's what's going on out there. People are being made redundant left, right, and centre, but do they? I don't know.
Well, I think that's. I mean that is a very stark illustration of the perennial problem we face, which is I think, a distinct imbalance in our industrial economy, well, in our economy generally, and we're just not turning out the skilled people. I'd just like to stick with the green economy for a second, because last week at this time, Richard Hagan was sitting at the wheel of his Tesla Ludicrous, barreling up to Glasgow to attend COP26, which wasn't taking place, but he was going anyway. And Richard, you did some stuff up there. Do you want to tell us what happened and what you were doing?
COP 26 hasn't happened, but Mock 26 is where the students, and it is the students and the younger people that know in 2050 and beyond, there is going through some serious crisis. COVID is one of several crises that are going on at the moment. The pension funds at long last are taking serious note with this Task Force for Climate Related Disclosure. They want full transparency. They want evidence that there is resilience, because obviously there's certain industries that are going to have to disappear, and there's certain industries that are going to start appearing. So it's a case of working out whereabouts you fit in. There's a huge amount. I've been watching lots of videos. The main one is, and it's exactly what you've been saying, Nick, is it's starting to change. We've got this shift now because of COVID. That industry has to respond. Today I was listening to the United Nations, whatever it was saying, and he says there's now, that's it, there's a shift. So the banks are having to take charge. The governments are having to take charge. And the best one I got was Helsinki, the mayor, saying they had 147 different actions. And that's what it is the government with the 10-point action. And a bit like when they're saying they're banning cars for 2030, they're not banning cars for 2030, they're allowing the hybrids. Now, if you get a BMW doing 80 miles an hour down the motorway with its little 3 cylinders, it's only doing 30 miles to the gallon. So they're not still addressing it. What businesses want is they want profit. That's the fundamental. And what we've now got to do is shift the business model to understand that we've got to give back to people with better skills, with better employment, with a real meaningful, why do you want to work for this company? So as owners, we are now responsible. It's not just a case of capitalism, and we're also then responsible for the planet. So therefore, there's a completely new design of new products. There's a completely new way of the whole business model. And B Corp is the closest I can find to it. COP26 is next November. They are making a lot of noise, and I would imagine by the time COP26 next November does turn up, there will be a seismic shift. And we are slowly seeing it. However, yesterday they said this is how much we're going to spend on military, and then today they've announced £16 billion project for the MOD. So already what they said yesterday has changed today. So they do like to put out good PR, the government does, to sort of say we're paying lip service to the sort of the green agenda. I
just want to pick up on something you pointed out and put it back to Paul at Santander. It's very telling that, as Richard was saying, some pension funds and the huge investors like BlackRock are beginning to demand of the people they invest in that they have policies moving towards carbon net zero process and ultimately product as well. Paul, is that something that Santander and other city institutions take note of? Is that coming down the track for general banking investment?
Well, I don't think I can talk for city institutions, Nick. I haven't left my my home in South Wales for about the last 8 months, so I'm probably not in a good position to comment. Although my carbon footprint has probably been improved massively, so I'm on the green agenda from that point of view. I think it comes back to the point I made earlier, though, in terms of what we're looking at. We haven't stipulated and made a firm condition in any cases that I'm aware of yet regarding any sort of targets or emissions, but I'm sure that will come. I think we're very aware of businesses that are maybe their processes, their systems, what they do is not fully aligned with being fully sustainable or the green agenda, and that's only going to increase. And we're doing some risk reviews at the moment, actually, for all our manufacturing sectors in the light of COVID. and the changes that are coming that are inevitably coming in the next couple of years. So it's going to be an increasing important part. But I think my focus is around sustainability and doing the right things in the right ways for the long term of a business. I think has to be the way in which us as bankers look at business propositions, not for short term gain, but to make sure that what businesses are trying to achieve is achievable in the long term in the right sort of way. So our sustainability agenda is a massively important part of the way that we look at all types of risks. So that's Santander's view on it from the UK anyway. And Angela's got a hand up, so it's hopefully not a difficult question for me.
Angela, go ahead.
No, it's not a question. My thoughts are, and I've experienced this quite a lot just recently, is that I feel a lot of the drive is coming from our younger generation. They are looking at sustainability, they're looking at carbon footprints, and I talk to 20 and 30-year-olds, and they're doing more than their bit to help the planet. It's like the post I put on last week about Christmas wrapping paper. My daughter said, why can't we buy recyclable wrapping paper? And it's just absolutely impossible to buy it. And she's 23. The kids know what's going on with the planet, and I really feel that they're helping to drive this forward. And I think we should, us old ones, should perhaps take a lesson from them.
There's a good opportunity there to bring the younger generation into manufacturing as well. And I wonder whether Richard has actually had experience of this from his side. With the drive of going green and what he's doing from that zero side, carbon emissions and all manner of stuff. Is it attracting the younger generation into manufacturing through doing that as well? Because there's no two ways about it. The younger generation are far way ahead of the majority of us. So it may be a fantastic way of getting them involved in manufacturing.
Well, I'm going to put Duncan on the spot here because he is of the alleged younger generation. I was also declaration of interest. He's my nephew. But Duncan, number one, tell us, very, very, very quick. Tell us what you're doing, because you are getting into manufacturing and something quite exciting. And then tell us what your views are on what you've heard regarding the inevitability of everything having to go as close to carbon net zero as possible.
Yeah, sure. Hi everybody. I am delighted to be Nick's nephew, and great to meet you all. And thanks for this call. It's absolutely fantastic and really useful. We are an early stage startup based in Edinburgh, and we're developing a water purification technology. And we've had a lot of support actually for the last 2 years. There's something called Scottish Enterprise, which has given us some grants, and we've had some grant funding. And there is an accelerator we're actually involved in with RBS. And I was thinking about this, what you were talking about before, Paul, about Santander. I think they've got 3 pillars, and one of their pillars is sustainability. And so they are, from the end of the year or the next 5 years, refusing to lend to any businesses that don't have a sustainability area to them. So that's quite interesting. I don't know if you've got that at Santander, or maybe it's coming through. One of the things that we've been looking at as a business is we're looking to launch next year, and we're looking at our business model. So we're thinking a lot about sustainability and circular economy business models. And to your point earlier about making products which last and going for higher quality products, actually the products we're trying to make, we're hoping are going to last for 10 years. So we're not looking to go to China straight away. We're hoping we can find manufacturers in Scotland, in the UK, potentially in Europe as well. But some of the challenges we're facing are trying to identify those manufacturers. And we've just spoken to the MTC, I think, in the manufacturing, anyway. They're one of the catapult centres. Very, very useful. However, it's not quite the response we were looking for, because we were instantly pitched at for £1,000 a day. And it's kind of, we need that. I think we need a better portal, and maybe this is it, a kind of link to and mentorship and guidance as a young company. How do we find the right manufacturers, and how do we navigate our way through this journey and find local manufacturers easily? And that's kind of a question that I have, and I don't have the answer to, but I'd love to, yeah, any feedback would be brilliant.
Well, there you go. There's one, perhaps quite a familiar story. I mean, I was talking with Duncan about this the other day, and I don't know, because obviously they've got to build prototypes, they've got to build first run. So it's going to be very low volume before it switches to high volume. And it's a question of how you actually get that done. I've never had to do it. I'm a journalist. I don't make things, but anybody got any ideas?
Go on. Do you want to go next?
I beg your pardon, Paul. It's quite ironic you say that, Nick. Literally this year we've been approached. Well, last year I was approached by a brain surgeon who had an idea for high-end spectacle cases, and we did some prototypes and some initial production runs. It's gone to market. I only had an email off of him last week saying that he was successful in finding investment, and he's potentially looking up to 15,000 units a year within 3 years, and wants me to quote for full production runs. So, and we've had somebody else for glasses, and we're talking to a prime at the moment, which on something very exciting to do with urban air mobility and sustainability. So that potentially could change the way we travel locally and potentially short haul. So there's lots of good things going on. And Duncan, if you want to find partners to work with, connect with Mark Weymouth and put the shout out on LinkedIn. He's got a fantastic post that is brilliant. Good news goes out every week, and it cheers me up no end, and it keeps me sane and sanity. So Mark, from a personal point of view, rather than me saying thank you every time in the comments box, top bloody job, mate. But what about your local chambers? You want to keep it, I'm not sure where you're from, Duncan, but we're a good quality company that wants to move forward and needs to keep abreast. Will be members of their county and their town chamber of commerce, I would imagine. So I would suggest you get in touch with your local chambers and ask them for a list of local machine shops within the area, and they'll be able to point you in the right direction as a starting point. Secondly, get yourself on LinkedIn and put a shout out, tag Mark Weymouth, and before you know it, you'll have lots of people saying we can do this, or I know a man that can help you, and they'll point you in the right direction. It's phenomenal. Also, Duncan, you mentioned RBS, and I'm sure Paul would be able to put you in touch with a local area guy that will know local businesses and what kind of kit they've got. So approach your banks as well. Shout. Somebody said the only way we can make things happen is to shout out loud and to collaborate and go locally. So it is all about collaborations to enable you to be able to win those larger contracts, because we've been successful in this prime doing a prototype at the moment because we could provide evidence that we did have a strong supply chain. We do have an ethical policy. We do adhere to 14,001. We recycle our coolant, we recycle all our metals, we separate everything. So we're very clean and efficient, and my MD's got a 9-year-old daughter that's very green, and the next project is to get rid of the vending machine because we're getting through too many plastic cups. So I've got to go out and buy a load of mugs similar to what Mark's just drinking out of there, so we can distribute to the guys. So we're all trying to do something, but it's not, there's no magic wand. It can't be fixed overnight. We've got a long haul and a lot to do, and I think it'd be my children's generation, my grandchildren, that will unfortunately have to fix our mess. I'd
like to just ask Julian a question, because Julian, you come from the your experience at the sort of angel end of investment, and I'm wondering if Duncan's story resonates, as in it's difficult to get companies, people who are making things as opposed to services or perhaps software. Is this a typical story that you're hearing from Duncan? Mute. I'll unmute you.
Sorry. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. I have to say I've focused mostly on service industries rather than manufacturing, but I don't think I can really answer, Nick. I think the process of raising capital is well, good news and bad news. Bad news is it's always difficult, and you never get the capital as soon as you could actually use it. The good news is that the sources of capital have widened, and there do seem to be more grants. I think I said 2 or 3 weeks ago that there are more grants available, more receptivity, and what I do see is a number of specialist funds. I mean, firstly, the government allocates big tranches of money out. I can't think what it's called, but one of the companies I've got has just raised $250,000. We're not a manufacturer, but the government it chops up money and puts it out to venture capital companies who it believes are better managing investment processes than them doing it themselves. That's a general thing.
That's the British Patient Capital Fund. It's part of the business bank, and they actually put funds into funds who then invest in long-term, companies that require long-term funding. That's the goal anyway.
I think there is I mean, you mentioned pension, or somebody mentioned pension funds earlier. I just think there's a general prominence that if there is an environmental or social impact aspect to a business that is raising funds, if nothing else, I think you can get through the door, because I think tunneling from the other end, I think sources of capital are thinking that they better be seen to be doing it. That not general funds, but they're all setting up little specialist funds to put capital behind it, because this is what the general partners and the institutions above them, like the pension funds and the banks, want them to do that. But sorry, it's not a very specific answer, but
it's okay. But it raises an important point. I don't know if anybody knows the electric truck company Arrival. They're British. Sorry.
Well, heard of them, yeah, very much so. And the news this week that they're going to list in the US. I think you're going to probably talk about.
Exactly so. I mean, I think they're founded actually by a Russian, but they're starting or mini factories around the world to make these electric trucks and buses. And the fact is that they had to go to America to list in order to get about 600 million to just take themselves forward. And it obviously sort of makes me sad that they couldn't do it here. They're a British company, but they had to go and list in America to get the money they needed. And I suspect that's also, the patient capital movement, I think, is growing, but it's obviously not growing fast enough for companies like Arrival. We've got about 20 minutes left. I'd just like to go back to, I'm swerving now, I'm going back to something Adam was talking about. I don't know if anybody, some of you do know that Adam has a kind of, holds forth on Twitter every Tuesday evening at 8 o'clock, #manufacturing hour. And during the course of that, somebody raised a news story about John Mills. I'm sure many of you will know John Mills, or at least his products. He founded the JML brand that sells these funky gadgets that you find at the end of the aisles in Robert Dias and places like that. Weird kitchen gadgets and that sort of thing. But he's a very active. He's actually a very active Brexiter, and he also leads a campaign to lower the exchange rate, because he believes that way we can revive manufacturing, or sorry, increase manufacturing in this country. And he started this thing called the Institute for Prosperity. And Caroline Flint, the former Labour minister and former Labour MP, she lost her seat in December in the Don Valley seat. She's what part of the red wall that turned blue. And she's going to chair that board. And as a result of Manufacturing Hour, I actually got in touch with Caroline, or at least Caroline got in touch with me because I mentioned her on Twitter, and she jumped on and said, thank you very much. I've now asked her for an interview. The point being that this is either just another blooming think tank, or it's a possibility if we can persuade them to try and reach out and be that combining voice, because the fractured voices on education, manufacturing, you name it, we just everybody, it's like charities. We've got 1 million charities all doing tiny little bits and pieces, but there's nothing cohesive, and it seems to be something we excel at in this country. It's fracturing our voice so nobody gets heard. And I just wanted to put that out there, because I think it could. I'm actually going to see if I can get her along to a meeting, or to one of these, because I think that'd be blooming brilliant if we can get her on there, so she can actually listen to people in the sector and firsthand. I think that'd be superb. So I'll keep you posted on that. Yeah, I haven't got a point to put after that. So listen, anybody got any thoughts? Oh, I'll tell you what, Simon in Washington, this is actually relevant, because I wonder, does manufacturing have a more coherent, cohesive voice in America than it does here? And if so, why or how?
I think it depends which states you go to. In Indiana, they care deeply about it. In Michigan, they care deeply about it. Connecticut, they're not so interested. There's no real history of manufacturing big time in Connecticut. There are a couple of. I mean, there's obviously manufacturing all over the place, but the places where you go, where you'll find very really coherent manufacturing policies, groups, I mean, the whole infrastructure, are places that have traditionally had very strong manufacturing background. So yeah, places like Boston and Massachusetts generally doesn't have a great deal of manufacturing policy-driven, industry-driven activity, even though they've got some extremely powerful and large manufacturers. Places like New York, the amount of manufacturing in New York has declined dramatically in the last 40 years. I mean, they used to be one of the biggest aircraft manufacturers, and now they don't have any aircraft manufacturing at all. For example, obviously Michigan is driven, no pun intended, by the car industry. But at the moment, if you want to find out where they're making lots and lots of cars and where manufacturing is a really big deal, you go to South Carolina. Because again, you go back 30 years, South Carolina had virtually no significant manufacturing of any shape or size. Then as a state, they said, we're going to attract manufacturers, because manufacturers are good, skilled, long-term jobs. And so they attracted, first of all, I think it was BMW. So BMW's biggest plant outside Germany is in South Carolina. The town has an airport that's big enough to support long-range executive aircraft, so that the senior execs can fly direct from Germany to South Carolina. And that's all about tax policy. And so now Boeing have got a huge plant there, Toyota, huge plant. So yeah, in places at the state level, yes, there's a significant amount of activity. In other places, you'll find very, very limited.
But Simon, you're talking state level, and you know, because the UK is larger than most states, but smaller than lots. Well, no, actually, it's not larger than most states, but in terms of population, it's very large. It's all about consciousness. It's all about the politicians having a direct understanding of what drives their economy and what drives their people. And it goes back to the same old thing. They don't seem to in this country. And that's why it's important, I think, that people like Caroline Flint, who may not be a politician anymore, but by golly, she's very political.
Yeah, one of the things they've done over here, I mean, it's a well-known thing about the corn subsidies, for example, and the fuel subsidies related to it, biofuels, and that was all about subsidizing people to continue doing what they were doing in a way that was no longer cost effective. So rather than saying we shouldn't be growing as much corn as we do, we should be directing our activities to get people to move to a different career, which is what they did in South Carolina. Up in Iowa, they said, no, we want to grow corn. And that's what they still do. They still get massive amounts of subsidy for it. And it's still as inefficient as it used to be, and hasn't changed. Whereas, as I say, places like South Carolina have changed dramatically as a result of some fairly aggressive long-term thinking.
Well, thank you. That's really interesting.
Oh, it was also driven for the South Carolina has got some very interesting union laws as well, which make it a place where it's very easy to employ and disemploy people. Yeah, it's basically a right to work state.
Okay, go.
Which means that they don't have to deal with the labour laws so Boeing, for example, have got fundamentally different labour laws that they're dealing with in South Carolina than up in Seattle, which is why they're basically gradually going to be closing Seattle and moving everything to South Carolina.
Wow.
They've already moved the 787 production. It used to have 2 plants. Now it's got 1.
Stephen Barr, do you mind if I bring you back into the conversation, because you've had experience at sort of government level, albeit some years ago. What do you think the most effective way of making voices heard is? I've long suggested we should just do it at local level, but do you think there is a way to get into the heads of government?
There is a piece around collaboration that I did see working very well. I think it was Lee earlier on mentioning the point that if we can get supply chains working effectively, then actually that's a very effective lever for change. So one of the things I was involved in, this is 5 years ago now, was the Grow Offshore Wind scheme. Some of you may remember that. It was related to the Manufacturing Advisory Service. But effectively what it was trying to do was get UK suppliers into the supply chains of the tier ones who were developing the offshore wind sites. So we accepted that those offshore sites were going to be owned and managed by inward investment companies funded by inward investment. But nevertheless, the supply chains needed to align. So that seemed to be an area where government could actually make a big difference. In other areas, I'm far more skeptical about the ability of industry to kind of help itself to move forward, unless we've got something that just helps sort of change the rules of the game a little bit. So I'd love to see something like that coming back in. And again, it was one of the reasons why I was disappointed with the net zero strategy announcement from government the other day. There's a missed opportunity here to try to get industry supporting something that we all see as massively important to change the way that we deal with environmental issues. Does anybody else see a positive role for government in that respect?
Yeah, Nick, just maybe explain a little bit. A few years ago, we were building or trying to build a bit more knowledge in the government around the space industry, by growing one of these space growth partnership activities. And the way we did it was we effectively mapped all the space companies or companies that were involved in space activities, and we went and met every single MP and explained to them why space was important for their constituency, how many people were employed, what those people did in terms of the local supply chain, and gradually we built up this knowledge in MPs that space was actually important. So when we started pushing policy towards ministerial level, all of the MPs actually understood, and I think that's one of the problems is simply the MPs don't understand manufacturing unless it's explained to them in details that make a difference to them, and what makes a difference to them is people voting for them. So you have to link what is it that you want them to do and why that benefits them in terms of people who may end up voting for them.
That's an interesting point. If at the risk of self-promotion, what, me? I mentioned an article that I'd written on LinkedIn. I'm going to find it and post the link. There we go. Sorry, I'm just trying to find it. And my point was that because manufacturing is no longer physically visible in most communities, that that perhaps what needs to happen is for the message to go out. Here's the link. The message needs to go out at local level, and I was talking more about municipal level and educational, but maybe that's a really, really interesting point you just made, Roy, that maybe local clusters, co-ops. I was talking about getting co-ops of manufacturers together. So collaborating at a local level, maybe manufacturing ambassadors, and they then go, and maybe the first people almost that they go and see is their local MP, and brief them. And if you got, or MPs in the plural in some areas, maybe that's the way to do it, rather than sort of, I understand that Airbus is obviously going to take this sort of Westminster level, but I think maybe that's what local clusters should do it at a local level and knock on the door of the constituency office.
Yeah, and we did most of that work through our trade association that's just called UK Space. So a lot of the work wasn't done by, the one or two big companies in the UK. It was mainly done by SMEs. And it was an opportunity for them to go and talk to their local MPs about what they were doing and highlighting, what benefits they brought to the area. And so I think something like that. Again, we're back to the kind of question, well, who at a national level in terms of the agencies that we've got, who could coordinate that? Because just sort of, picking a few areas and doing it, you've really got to have it as a coherent effort across the whole country. Because, I doubt there is any constituency that doesn't have some kind of manufacturing in it.
Yeah,
I'd agree with you. Different area of the countries have different strengths in different sectors within manufacturing, and then you've got a small mix of SMEs like ourselves that are subcontractors that do a little bit of everything, and until they find those customers they can work with and start focusing and going down a particular avenue. But what we've done, and getting back to something Angela said about young 30-year-olds, is where we do struggle to recruit, we've engaged with our local college where we take on apprentices. And there's also something called, we use it's called the Somerset Business in Education Trust, and they link businesses and schools together to highlight what young people are required to if somebody wants to be a machinist like we do, then you need these kind of qualifications, and they try and gel. And having met young people, in order for me to attract them, we do have to be environmentally friendly. We do have to be clean and seem to be doing the right thing, because otherwise they wouldn't come and work for us. And also manufacturing traditionally is being seen as a dirty, oily job. However, they're so highly skilled, and it sickens me that, and I mean this respectfully, that in some parts of the country, a skilled machinist, you can understand why they leave, because they can take a very, very small pay cut, have no stress, no worries, and stack shelves. So it's, again, the days of £1 a t-shirt are gone, and people have got to accept that and pay a true cost. And that's the only way we're going to be able to sustain ourselves and the planet, is just stop buying things for the sake of it. I mean, my wife, bless her, oh God, you got another pair of shoes or a dress? Well, it was a bargain. Well, I've got a spare bedroom full of bargains, and it's a case of, do you really need it? So we try and say to ourselves now, do we want it? Yes. Do we need it? Not really. Well, we're waiting until we need it.
I'd rather tackle the issue of getting government on side, Nick, to be honest, than the issue of reducing others' shopping habits. I think that would probably be an easier task to get government on side.
Can we're drawing to a close. I want to give Angela a chance just to talk very briefly about your upcoming event, Angela, and to see whether any of us, I'm signed up for it already, and I know one or two others are as well, but go ahead and just tell everybody what it is.
Thanks, Nick. It was actually inspired by questions being asked on Kaizen Central. How do we make manufacturing more attractive to our younger generation? And it's something that I feel quite passionate about, and it sort of led me down a path that's nothing at all to do with my business. It's almost become a passionate hobby. So I've ended up having conversations with people from all around the country, looking at what they're actually doing. And I have Graham is representing the Leeds Manufacturing Festival. They hold a festival once a year to try and engage colleges and schools and young people to come and work in manufacturing. I've also got Mark Bingo from the Engineering Trust. They're based down in Oxford, where they have their own particular issues because they can't recruit engineers into the manufacturing sectors in Oxford because of the high cost of living there. So they're trying to get the kids from schools to become more interested in manufacturing so that they've got their own homegrown engineers. And then I've got Gemma from the Plymouth Manufacturing Group. Again, they've got their own issues down there in that it's a very poor area. They have a lot of manufacturing, but there is very little ambition amongst the children and the school leavers to actually do anything better than what their parents are already doing. So they have their own separate issues. And it's been really interesting talking to these people and listening to their issues and what they're actually doing. But going back to what Lee was saying and what Adam was saying about, we've got all of these different entities that don't work together. It seems to be the same around the country with different entities working with different groups and schools and manufacturers, but none of them actually feed off each other and help each other to sort of appeal to the whole of the UK.
Well, Angela, but you've got an event, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah, please tell us what that is before we go.
Yeah, sorry. So the event is next Thursday, the 26th at 1 p.m. We're going to have the speakers talking about what they've actually been doing to engage with young people and engage with their own manufacturing community. So I'm hoping it's going to be a really positive webinar, and I think it will be really interesting as well. And I think other things will lead off from that.
Yeah, Angela, if you could just, don't forget, if you want the link to this, please go to Angela's, you've all registered, so you go to her entry on the page, and just follow her on LinkedIn. It was fascinating. Roy very kindly mentioned to Angela about the new Space Cadet. I've got to stop using that word Space Cadet because it makes the new space apprentice scheme that Roy has been very, very instrumental in setting up. And we're hoping that we can get some input on that as well into Angela's event. Congratulations, Angela. Your example of one person trying to move a mountain and shifting it even just a little bit is fantastic. Listen, guys, it's 7 o'clock. Dinner beckons. Got a nice bottle of Malbec just breathing gently in the kitchen. It's calling to me, so I'm going to go and say thank you very much for being here. As ever, a wonderful discussion. I appreciate not everybody sort of, some people like to just absorb rather than contribute, and that's fine. But just if anybody ever wants to say anything, just stick your hand up, please. Thank you to new blood coming in. Duncan, great to see you. Sorry I shan't see you at Christmas for obvious reasons, but bless you all for being here, and see you all next time.